Hi everybody, it's Matt Staton here and Cliff Gardner from Berkshire Hathaway Home Services London. We're just going to have a little chat, a little bit of a review about sort of what we've seen over the last 12 months, 2023, but also getting our crystal balls out, looking into 2024 and sort of seeing what we think might happen in sales and letting. So Cliff, we'll start with sales. Obviously, an interesting year, 2023 for the sales market. Summarize it for us.
Yeah, it was a tough year. A lot of people worried about the market and where it was heading. And the economy was obviously in dire straits with inflation at a crazy level. It was difficult to get bank finance. Buyers really need to understand where they are in the cycle before they make a decision. So we were doing a lot of work reassuring people that prices weren't about to fall off a cliff, and that it was a good time to buy. We were working hard last year to get our clients' properties sold, but in the end it was quite a rewarding year. How do you feel it went in lettings?
Yeah, I mean, sort of on the lettings front, very much a transitional year. I think, we did a blog recently and we talked about it being a year of two halves. First half very much followed on from the high intensity of 2022. We had the post-COVID bounce. We had that backlog, that pent-up demand kind of really coming through the system, and everything that went on the market gone within hours, multiple bids. That really continued all the way over to sort of summer 2023. There was definitely a feeling, I think, towards the end of summer that some of those asking prices that maybe sort of we as agents in the industry were looking to achieve might have overshot the mark a little bit, and we sort of started seeing offers coming in, maybe not at the asking price, sort of tied to successful let being a little bit longer. So I feel like there's been a bit of more of a realignment now. I think we've kind of gone through that COVID surge, and we're back more to normality. And November, December were months where there was some great levels of transactions. We had sort of record months as a business, but I think the volume in the industry had dropped off a little bit in those months. So I think that's probably just reflective of maybe us hitting that ceiling in terms of tenant affordability. Cost of living crisis is going on still, and I think tenants have so much money they're willing to spend, and we might have hit a ceiling for now. But I think it will keep going next year. I mean, one question I sort of have for you on the sales front is where were those buyers coming from in 2023? You mentioned obviously it's a bit of an affordability thing, potentially cost of finance, higher interest rates. How much was that a factor? Where were those buyers sort of coming from?
Well, it was interesting because the profile of buyers were more experienced investors, still clients from overseas. A lot of them are cash buyers these days. They don't require finance. So, and they were just like sharks circling the water. I mean, they saw that this is a great buying opportunity in 2023. Confidence was low, and they were going to take advantage of that. Many of our clients took offers to get things moving, but obviously as they moved up the market, they were able to compensate for that by having offers accepted themselves. So in the end, it was a market for a savvy buyer last year, and a buyer that perhaps understood the dynamics of the market and how it works.
Would you say sort of last year was a good year for people looking to potentially upsize? I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff. The media, as we know, can be incredibly negative sometimes, and it's a lot of doomsday. But was it potentially a good time for people to upsize it in the market last year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a certain amount of people move every year for reasons other than having to upsize. There's divorce, there's people moving schools, there's people moving areas. But yeah, sure. Moving up market was the way you made the big gains. But you took a confident buyer to want to reinvest more money in a market that it was still coming down. I mean, prices came down last year, and they're tipped to come down a little bit this year. But hopefully that's the end of it, and we'll start seeing a positive return, and prices start going up again as we get through 2024.
Well, I mean, on that subject, looking forward to 2024, I know from sort of a bird's eye view, looking at sales and lettings, definitely feels like there's been a bit of a buzz already so far in January. But talk to us a little bit about what have you seen? I know it's only early days, or 2 weeks into January, but what have you seen so far? And I guess what's the expectations for the sales market in 2024 from your perspective?
Well, it's a really interesting time because we started to see a real uptick in activity in December. Buyers seem to come to the market looking at some of our more long-standing stock, and they were reevaluating it, saying, well, actually, it looks like a good buying opportunity now. So we saw a real uptick in activity in December, some great deals being agreed, and that's carried on into January. Buyer registrations are up, viewing levels are up. what we don't have is a big influx of new property, and that's what I think is going to keep prices trending in a positive direction this year. There's just simply not a huge amount of new properties coming to the market, and if that continues, then we'll get through this period a lot quicker, and you'll start seeing prices trending in the opposite direction. We'll start seeing some price increases. But certainly, no, sentiment's good. I think obviously we've got massive geopolitical headwinds. We've got the situation in Gaza, we've got the situation in Ukraine, horrible situations. People worry about that when it comes to the property market. But we're in a period now where we're about to have a change of government. And the previous government, the current government, are trying to cling on to power. So we might see some tax incentives. We might see some, there's rumours that stamp duty is going to be reduced. This is all exciting news. So as well as that, obviously the new government, if we get a new government under Keir Starmer, he's going to want to make a good positive start. So there'll be some incentives around that will hopefully help the housing market. Certainly, inflation is coming down, and interest rates on mortgages, and there's some great mortgage deals around now, and great, but under 4% for some good fixed rate deals, and that's going to help buyers. If they can finance these property transactions, then more transactions will happen, and there'll be more confidence in the market.
Absolutely. I mean, look, ultimately, as we say, you buy a house, but you borrow your mortgage rate, right? And the mortgage rate, and you're fixing for 2 years, maximum 5. And maybe the property that you can get today in the current market, might not be there for you financially in 2 years, 5 years. So you can get it now, but get that mortgage rate locked in for 2 years. 2 years down the line, there's that potential to refinance potentially, and you might be looking at a better rate there. But you've got the property that you've set your heart on. That's a great investment for you now. So it's an old adage, but it's one that's probably relevant more so now than before. And I guess one other question for me, so on the sales front, I guess historically election years in the sales market can be disruptive, but you kind of touched upon it, but it sort of feels that it's a bit different this year. We've got two potential prime ministers, Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, who, although there are differences, there's not that much daylight between them potentially in terms of the real politics that might come out of it. So is that kind of having an impact, do you think? Is that something maybe people aren't as worried on, going to be as apprehensive about kind of buying than there might have been sort of in previous years, without being too political?
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think, we've had 13 years of a Conservative government now. I mean, they a change is, it can't be a bad thing. I mean, it's not the threat that the Corbyn government once was. I think, as you say, the parties are more closely aligned probably than they've ever been. So yes, there'll be a pause in activity around the election, but as I say, with the tax incentives that are muted by the Conservative government and the good first impression that Keir Starmer is going to want to make, I don't think it's a necessarily bad thing for the property market. So I'm pretty optimistic about this year, as are a lot of the buyers we're talking to.
Great, perfect. So 2024 for the sales market, positive indicators on the dashboard so far.
Could be a good year.
Great. Yeah. I mean, look, from a lettings perspective as well, I mean, lettings is pretty robust, always has been, and maybe a little bit more shelter for some of those economic headwinds. But again, the big thing I think for 2024 for lettings is the return of seasonality. We used to be able to start the year in January and almost predict pretty accurately where those months were going to be busier, where they were going to be slightly quieter and less demanded. We could advise our clients accordingly, great times when to look to bring their property on the market. That went out the window during COVID because we had lockdowns, people's moves got out of that sort of routine, that seasonality. But what we saw in November and December is definitely a return to that kind of traditional letting seasonality. Look, that's positive, that's good. Means that landlords, professional landlords, can really plan when their properties are going to come to market, and help to get those great yields that we know are important to them. So I expect January is getting stronger and stronger every week, which is great. I expect February, March, April busy, and then once we get to those summer months, those peak trading seasons where we're getting families, students, international students, real strengthening. So I think rental prices will probably remain relatively flat, modest gains between now and summer, but I do suspect once we get to summer, we'll see some increases creeping back in again. I think probably by the end of the year, I would predict we're going to be looking probably 4 to 5% increases on rental. So modest, certainly not the 20% we had the post-COVID bounce. That really was more of a realignment as we discussed in the blog, but definitely some sort of a bit more stability in the lettings market, I think, in 2024.
Great stuff. This will have a good year.